outside of Donald Trump rallies and more comments. Let's just get one thing out of the way right at the top. This isn't about Donald Trump. I find some of his rhetoric alarming to say the least, but the left, which means the iron triangle, pride-bullying revolutionary wannabes, billionaire agitators, and socialism-loving politicians, formerly called community organizers, formerly called race-baiting agitators, like Obama's terrorist buddy Bill Ayers, they're the ones that have created this mess. This upsurge of American fascism that we're observing has nothing to do with Donald Trump, because this is what the left always does. They block with coercion, intimidation, or physical violence any viewpoint not in line with their murderous policies of total political mind control and inevitable economic ruin. I mean, what, after all, are Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter if it's not just the street muscle? Now, leftist apologists for these street actions, like take Rachel Maddow, for example, want us to believe that these violent incidents are the result of, and not the cause of, the disturbances at the Trump rallies. And that's because the one requirement for being a progressive is that anything that has ever happened can only happen if it advances their world agenda. Everything else doesn't the best bit of history. Hey, speaking of history, let's do a little recent history and then some less recent history. Left-wing protesters made up of Bernie Sanders supporters, Black Lives Matter clubs, public sector union muscle, and museum-grade idiots with tender have done the following. On March 19, 2016, they attempted to stop drivers from attending the Donald Trump rally in Arizona, stopping traffic for 90 minutes and inconveniencing, and in fact imperiling, the lives of both those headed to the rally and those simply in a rush to get to their doctor's appointments or to pick up their kids after school. On March 12th, professional protester Thomas DiMassimo rushed the stage of the Trump event. He didn't like what Trump has to say, so in true progressive fashion, he determined to force his opinion on everyone else and make sure that they didn't get to do it either. On March 11th, progressive rallied at a Trump rally in Chicago, and when Trump canceled it due to safety concerns, they celebrated a victory over opposing ideas by calling him a coward. As I said, this violence is not about Trump. It's about the way they do business on the left. If this were just about Trump, then none of the rest of this would make any sense. On March 18th, gay conservative Milo Yiannopoulos was banned from speaking in San Francisco. No concrete reason was given. Milo speculates that he was too gay for San Francisco to tolerate. On February 25th, Cal State students blocked the doors so that they or anyone else would not have to hear Ben Shapiro talk about campus bullying. Once inside the venue, the protesters activated the fire alarm. They also assaulted a disabled man, a liberal, it turns out, who simply wanted to hear what Shapiro had to say. On November 9th of last year, University of Missouri assistant fascist Melissa Click assaulted a student journalist, famously calling for some muscle to attack non-progressive reporters. On November 7th of 2015, Yale students disrupted a William F. Buckley event. One student was removed by force and several attendees were spat upon. Now, you can see that at this rate, going just with the reported incidents of suppression, assault, and intimidation is going to take longer than Fidel Castro's speech. But it is interesting, isn't it, how the left will disrupt the peaceful expression of different opinions with violence and then accuse the people holding those different opinions of starting the whole thing. Basically, if you want to understand the modern left, it's pretty much something like this. Knock it off! Mom, Billy's hitting me! Sounds funny, but it's not, and it's not new either. In the 1920s and the 30s, the National Socialists had their own private army to disrupt meetings of those who supported the White House or who dared to criticize Adolf Hitler. There's no chance whatsoever, none whatsoever, that Hitler and the National Socialists do not would achieve power without the Sturmabteilung, or BSA, organized street thugs that silence opposition voices through disruptions, street violence, ripping down opposition posters, and a little murder here and there. Chinese communists did it particularly well. That's where this term that progressives are so proud of comes from, by the way, in political correctness. It was a term used by Mao Zedong, who, having killed 50 million of his own people in the name of income inequality and free health care, encouraged cadres of wild-eyed students who beat, intimidated, humiliated, and eventually killed anyone who disagreed with their socialist utopia. So, why are they so afraid of these progressive American fascists and their street muscle? Well, they're afraid of people like David Horowitz, who they disrupted, assaulted, or tried to assault at Butler University, Berkeley, Michigan, MIT, Princeton, and the University of Chicago. Also, Portland State, Texas, Indiana, UC Davis, the University of Washington, University of Hawaii, University of Illinois, Delaware, UCLA, and San Francisco State. Also at Boston University, Harvard, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Bowling Green, North Carolina, Rhode Island, Purdue, Gonzaga University, the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Missouri. Now, David Horowitz is an intellectual type, you might all know because I worked with him often, as I did on this segment, but physically, David's not a large man. So what are these young, healthy, 20-something students and their tenured fascist enablers so afraid? They're afraid to listen to our ideas because our ideas are better than their ideas, and they know it whether they face it or not. You know, you can't really blame these American fascists. Violence, disruption, riots, and chanting, pretty much all they've got. Conservatives love free speech. We're ready to defend it with our lives because when it comes to the free exchange of ideas, we win and they lose, and both sides know it. Which is why one side is for free speech, the other dismisses as hate speech. Any word, sentence, speech, or rally that gives their goal of ensuring that the university becomes a place to go to perpetually close the human mind and that political dissent be crushed with the same violence that these fascist bastards on the left have always been. We need your help to keep these messages coming. If you want to help us make a difference, please go to billfootball.com and become a member.
September 11, 2012, Islamic militants attacked the American diplomatic compound in Benghazi, Libya, killing Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and U.S. Foreign Service Information Management Officer Sean Smith. Stevens was the first U.S. ambassador killed in the line of duty since 1979. This even made national and international news. And this is what it looks like, burning down the embassy. I have some thoughts on Benghazi, if I can make this work. I have some thoughts on Benghazi, and I want to say, by the way, at the outset of this, the Bill Whittle piece we just saw, I don't know if Bill Whittle is a Christian or not a Christian. He's a very articulate spokesman on conservatism, but he brings up an issue that, although I don't want to get involved in politics, impacts the question of ideas. How do we communicate ideas in a hostile culture? As I thought about Benghazi, I noted a few things. We had effectively an embassy, a diplomatic compound, in a geographical location of the world that is hostile to our national beliefs. Ambassadors, by definition, travel to foreign lands and live in those foreign lands. They are representing the nation of which they are a citizen in embassies and outposts that are built in foreign countries. I think Dr. Geisler was very good last night as he looked at this when I first approached him about this theme. He hadn't really done anything on it, and as he thought about it and sort of working with the idea of an embassy, he said, It started occurring to him that the church has sort of lost its bearings as to what it is supposed to be and what it is not supposed to be. We are ambassadors to this world. We're not citizens of this world. The church is an embassy, a place of safety for the ambassadors, in theory. Sometimes, as was the case in Benghazi, the ambassador and compound were in a culture which was not only in disagreement with their worldview, but was actively hostile to their worldview. Number two, we had a distracted leadership. Even though there were numerous requests for protective measures leading up to the attacks by the late ambassador and his staff, national leaders were busy promoting a different agenda and paid little attention to the warnings. Islam, we were told, is the religion of peace. Bin Laden had been killed, and so terrorism had now been resolved. And GM was back in action. And all is well with the world. Three, there were enemies within the ranks, and this is perhaps the most important aspect. The State Department had hired 17 Martyrs Brigade group, a terrorist group, a militia group with extremist ties, to protect the diplomats. They had the keys to the compound. They did the work in the compound and had complete access to free range within the compound. And so when the assault took place, the gate and the fence around the compound that was there to protect the ambassador and his associates was compromised because they could just simply unlock the gate and stroll right in, which is exactly what they did. The result was devastating. And by the time anyone got there to help, it was just too late. So what does this have to do with the church? Well, before I proceed on this, I think I'll take a moment and pray, because I need to guard myself to not be too judgmental and legalistic on this issue, because I can be. Because it's something that bothers me greatly. And fortunately, it's Stephanie Potts here, because she can remind me that Bill Heigl, at least in spirit, Bill Heigl, pardon me, Lord. Bill Huntsberger is here, at least in spirit, saying God loves the church. And that is true. Heavenly Father, I come before you. And I know that sometimes I could be short-minded with leadership. But we live in difficult times. And it's important that we, as your servants, as your ambassadors, have a grasp of where we are culturally, where we are in terms of beliefs, and what our task is to do in a hostile environment. How can we reach out to and love those who have an avowed and orchestrated hatred of the things of the gospel? Lord, we commit ourselves into your hands and just ask that your Holy Spirit would indeed, as we sang in the worship song, invade this place, that your presence will be here. We give ourselves into your hands in Christ's name. Amen. What does this have to do with the church? Some really are scratching their heads and wondering how this applies to the church. I would suggest we are, metaphorically speaking, watching the embassy called the church being burned down to the ground for similar reasons. This time that we live in is more like the first century in which the church was born than any time between then and now. Many who have heard me speak before know that this is a common theme for me. We need to know where we're at and how we got here. Again, I don't know if Bill Whittle is a Christian or not. His short-minute video, American Fascist, accurately outlines a hostile culture in which we find ourselves. What we're seeing up close and personal is a battle of world views and the battle tactics of progressive activists. I want to emphasize the word activist. Most people do not feel this way. When we see some things that are happening between the police and others, we grieve for violations of personal rights, and we should do that. But that doesn't describe even the majority of police officers that are active. Something else is going on. There's a spiritual battle going on. And is going on within the church and outside of the church as well. So before we get too far in answering this, church, I want to ask a question. In the first century, who spoke for culture? Some of you have the answer to this already. Who was the spokesman for culture in the first century? Caesar. Caesar was the spokesman for culture. You could worship any deities you chose. Multiple deities are preferred. You could live pretty much any way you chose to live, provided you swore allegiance to Caesar first and foremost as a supreme deity. The proclamation of Christ as Lord was in direct competition with the worship of Caesar. It was a worldview statement that Paul was telling Christians, you must confess. You have to choose. Are you going to worship Caesar or are you going to worship Christ? It's a clear choice. You can't have both. What did the first century look like? The average person believed that all truth claims were equally true. Philosophers believed that all truth claims were equally false. Politicians believed that all truth claims were equally useful. Remember those. Those are going to be very important in a little while. Average person believed all truth claims were equally true. Philosophers believed all truth claims were equally false. Politicians believed all truth claims were equally useful. The one thing that would not be tolerated was absolute truth claims. Christians were called atheists. Why were they called atheists? Because they denied the existence of multiple gods and swore there's only one true God. For that reason, they were considered atheists. Sex was a high priority, and largely so for recreational purposes. Most men of means married to produce offspring, but also had a mistress, which is the one whom they took to social functions. Their wife rarely accompanied them to social functions. Most men of means had a young boy, 12, 13 years old generally. A catamite is what they called them, for the purpose of sexual gratification. It was kind of the rite of entry into manhood. Abortion and infanticide were common because children interfered with the lifestyle and happiness of the parents-to-be. They were inconvenient. And so, if a child was born, the mother would take the child and lay it at the feet of the father. And he had two choices. A, he could leave the child covered. B, he could uncover the child. If he left it covered, that meant they would keep it. If he uncovered it, that meant she had to dispose of it in some way. One of the things the early Christians began doing was going out and looking for abandoned children and bringing them home and raising them as their own. Some of the religions had temple prostitutes, and sexual activity was part of their religious ritual. We see that actually in 1 Corinthians. One of the issues that was going on in the church, by the way, in the early church, how many of the new believers had previously been pagan? All of them! Except for those who were Jewish, but other than that, they were all pagans. And so they came into the church with their pagan ideas. It had to be changed and transformed to this new worldview that they had been introduced to. And so some of them were stopping off for a little bit of worship on the way to church with the temple prostitutes, and that was creating a problem. And Paul had to address that. Public bathrooms, this is interesting because of what we see going on in our nation right now, were not segregated. Some were as large as 100 seats where men and women, boys and girls socialized, discussed events of the day, while taking care of bodily needs. Let that ruminate in your mind for a moment or two. Why is that? Because anatomy and sexuality were just part of the recreational landscape of culture. And so, intimacy was not really even known about, much less highly valued. Into this culture, a hostile worldview, the church was born, and the Apostle Paul tells the Corinthians, therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, making his gospel, his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. We have a different worldview. We have a different set of values. We view human sexuality as personal and sacred. Given between a man and a wife by the Creator, it is not for public recreational activity. It is not for public display, etc., etc., etc. So we should be more Victorian in our outlook probably on these things, because that really is more biblical. The first century worldview was obviously hostile to culture, and we get a glimpse of that with the Apostle Paul. About that time, we read, there arose no small disturbance concerning the way. That would be the followers of Christ. For a man named Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought no little business to the craftsmen. These he gathered together with the workmen in similar trades and said, men, you know that from this business we have our wealth. So what was the first thing that he was concerned about?
Money.
Money, right? Money was a driving force. Why? Because money gets you stuff, it gets you power. And so money is the driving force of his new crusade. When they heard this, they were enraged. Okay. And you see in here that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this Paul, this guy here, has persuaded and turned away a great many people, saying that gods made with hands are not gods. Paul is doing what? He's challenging the worldview. Where is he doing that? He's going to Walmart. He's going to school assemblies, and in a kind way he's going, why do you believe this? Help me understand. I want to talk about this. And some are going, I think he has a point. And the silversmith is not happy. And there is a danger, not only that this trade of ours may come to disrepute, but also the temple of the great Artemis may be counted as nothing, and she may even be deposed from her magnificence, she whom all Asia and the world worship. Notice, he doesn't say we know the truth about Artemis, that she is a true god or goddess. He doesn't say that. He says she may lose her place. Why? Because there's a better, more persuasive worldview available, and people are adopting it, and it's going to cut into our earning potential here. So we have to address this. When they heard this, they were enraged and were crying out, great is Artemis of the Ephesians! Great is Artemis of the Ephesians! And it was an uproar. They were not happy. They were blocking the roadway so drivers couldn't get through to their doctor's appointment. They were disruptive of society around them because they didn't have good arguments. They only had emotion. Distracted leadership and enemies within the ranks, we saw in Benghazi. We have that in the early church as well. Much of the New Testament, I love it when I talk with people who are in or have started new cult groups or even groups within the church that tend toward legalism. We're watching one right now that is birthed in Denmark. The last Reformation, they call themselves, trying to get the church back to the pristine faith of the first century. And I watch their videos, and I listen to what he's saying, and I ask myself, has he read the Bible? I mean, think about this. There's this idea, he's floating out there, that there's this pristine, unadulterated faith that everyone believed all the way across and there was no disagreement. And they all loved each other, and they evangelized the world, and they performed miracles and raised the dead, and they fed the poor, and everyone came to the faith because of this one faith that was pristine, unadulterated, and consistent. And I read the New Testament and I go, I can't find it. It isn't there. I find dissension. I find false teachers. I find Paul warning the leadership to wake up. You guys have a problem. In Acts 2, the Apostle Paul warns the Ephesian elders with tears. Pay careful attention to who?
Yourselves.
I had a discussion a little earlier with somebody talking about some celebrity leaders that we have. And should we recommend them or not recommend them? Once really solid teachers that now have some questionable stuff. And I said, they were solid teachers. I learned a great deal from at least one of them. I never really listened to the other one. But I have to tell you, I don't recommend their ministries. Not because they're not solid on the essentials, but because they haven't paid attention to themselves. The celebrity has distracted them. The result is false teaching and bad behavior is creeping in. Pay attention to yourselves and to who else?
All the flock.
All the flock. All the flock. Thank you, Eric. So leaders are working, looking at themselves and at you. And they're on guard. And he goes on. In which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. Why? I know that after my departure, so who's the gatekeeper at that point? Paul. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves. What kind of wolves? One country. One country. Fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. They're not going to invite you to lunch. They're going to make you. And from among your own selves men will arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away followers after them. So, where are the dangers? Outside? Don't come in. Inside, and we birth up. And so what is our task as leaders? To watch the flock and to guard the gates. Not to give the keys to the hostiles who want to invade and destroy the embassy. Over the next 4 centuries, the church challenged culture in their thinking, their behavior, and transformed Western civilization, which we have enjoyed the benefits of for nearly 1,700 years. We don't think, for most of us, history started like 13 minutes ago. We don't really think about it. How many, I watch these videos sometimes where someone goes out on the man in the street interviews and asks about history that's only 10 years old, who was president, and they don't know, they don't even hardly know who the vice president is today. And they're going to be voting, that's a serious problem. What did it change? There's a really good book, it's, I don't know, 10 years old, 12 years old, maybe, by Alvin Schmidt, calling how Christianity transformed civilization. And he goes through the first three centuries of the church. Alvin Schmidt does a great job. And we see that it elevated the role of women. That's one of the things the church did. Because women were not highly valued. As a wife, it was for political or business reasons that you were married to and to produce children for inheritance. Any fun stuff was really held for the mistress and others, orgies and so forth. The role of marriage was elevated and sanctified. One man, one woman for life, committed to each other, in good times and in bad times. When the husband is suffering financial setback or business woes, or the wife is going through the change, to be committed in spite of what's going on, because you love them and you're committed to them, not for any other reason. It's sanctified and holy. The babe in the womb was considered a gift from God and protected it. Infanticide became viewed as a taking of an innocent life, more commonly called murder. Children were no longer the objects of recreational sex. And there was absolute truth, it was discovered, and it was found, guess where? And the spokesmen for culture were pastors and theologians. If you wanted to know something that was true, the pastors and theologians were the ones that you went to. This went on for a very long time. Now, I'm not saying the church didn't have the problems, it clearly did. Factions of the church went into deep heresy, which is what brought about the Reformation. After the Reformation, pastors passed on the faith in an interesting way by teaching and training layman scholars. Can you believe that? They didn't rely on seminaries. Not that they weren't available, they were. But the first line of defense was right here. The second line of defense was the pastor discipling the elders who would become the layman leaders, equally as educated at his feet as he became wherever he gained his education, who in turn passed that faith on to others who would become leaders. The future pastor of the church had been born into, raised up in, and trained in that church. That's called discipleship. I hear a lot about discipleship, and I've been in discussion with Pastor James and some of his people here. I love their hearts, by the way. I love this church a lot. I've gotten more connected, I think. We had two, I've talked about this a lot, though. I had God brought two angels that appeared at my side here at this convention. As I was coming here, I was like, how am I going to get all this done? And God raised up Andrew and David. Give them a hand. They largely kept me sane to make sure everything flowed as we needed it done. Why? Because they love God. And they have a real pastor who says discipleship is more than just learning this text. It is acting it out in how you live your life as a servant. This continued until around the year 1825, when the ministry of church training, equipping, guarding believers was largely abandoned and replaced with the mission of the church. Evangelism was brought into the church. There's an interesting thing here. How many think that the church is the place where you're supposed to bring non-believers to hear the gospel? Don't raise your hand. I don't really want to know. This is a rhetorical question. Because I will embarrass you if you do that. We have an interesting statement in 1 Corinthians 14 where Paul is talking about the gifts and how they are to be used. And if you should speak in tongues, and not everyone speaks in tongues. And then he gets to a point in verse 23 where he says this interesting thing that few people have seen. He says, if you all speak in tongues, are you with me? And if the unbeliever come in, what does that mean? Pardon?
It wasn't normal for an unbeliever.
It wasn't normal for them to be there. You get it. If the unbeliever come in, they will think you're crazy. And then he follows up the next verse. But if you all prophecy, and if the unbeliever come in, there's that word again. What does that mean? Not normally there. So the ministry of the church is not evangelism. I know that's going to sound heretical to some, and you can argue with me about that after we're done, and I would be glad to engage you in that discussion. The ministry of the church is to care for the ambassador. The ministry of the church is to pray with and pray for those who are in the family of God, the faith. The ministry of the church is to equip them and answer the hard questions. I listened to Dr. Geisler last night about the young boy who came with that question. I have a little story, and I'm going to share it. I'm going to take this. Hopefully I'll still be done on time, but this one's important to me, and it's about a mutual friend of mine and Andre Traverses. Her name is Danny Chapin. And Danny hails from Cortez, Colorado. Probably you've never heard of it. Little in the Four Corners area. Next town over is Memphis, which is 50% Wiccan. Cortez is probably 40% Mormon. 3 Indian reservations, so animism or kind of the worship of nature is pretty high in that area. And she attended several of the churches. Most of them had at some point sort of suggested that she would be better served elsewhere. Because Danny has a problem with asking questions. She likes to think about things. You know, she said to me one day, you can't tempt me with sex. I wouldn't commit adultery. You can't tempt me with sex. You can't tempt me with money. I have everything I need. I'm really pretty content financially. You can tempt me with knowledge. Because she wanted to know stuff. In some ways, she does remind me of Andre. Andre calls me, you know, periodically, once a week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes every other week. And he starts with a statement of, I was reading my devotional today, I was reading this passage, and I want to know what this means. And my first statement back to him is, what is the context? He doesn't want to give the context back. And we walk through the context, and then he goes, here's what I think it means. I go, oh, that's exactly what it means. Context is such a neat thing. Danny was on a plane going to Israel, and I was sitting next to her. And she was reading some New Age something or other. I don't recall what it was exactly. But I thought, oh, this will be interesting. I've got 11 hours to kill. Let's see what I can do to entertain myself. And so I asked her some kind of question about the book, and she gave me this kind of go away, you narrow-minded fundamentalist ticket. And I thought, oh, this could be fun. So I asked her the same question. And she gave me a different, go away, you narrow-minded fundamentalist bigot answer. And so I thought, yeah, should I? Yeah, why not? I asked her again. And she goes, you wouldn't talk. And she started off on all of the issues that she had run into in church. And I listened for a few minutes, and I said, how did you develop your worldview? And she stopped. Worldview? What's a worldview? You don't know what a worldview is? Let's talk about worldviews. And so we started laying out the possible worldviews someone could hold. And she said, this is fascinating. Why haven't I learned this before? I said, no. But you're reading about it now. Isn't that a cool thing? And we spent 10 days in Israel, and she stuck to me like glue, writing on napkins and papers and anything she could write on, asking me questions about anything that would come to her mind. And we would walk through the answers, and sometimes I would do it by questions because I love questions. I love asking questions to help them get answers. And she went back to Cortez, Colorado, a transformed woman because she was getting her questions answered. She rededicated her life to Christ. And then she called me one day. She got into a church and she was so excited. Now, Danny is a physical therapist in Cortez, Colorado. And if you get physically injured and need a physical therapist, you're going to meet Danny. And Danny is engaging, and she will talk to you about spiritual things without you even realizing she's doing it until you're in the middle of the discussion. In fact, she met up with me, one of the area women of the evening, and engaged her in discussion to the point that she had went to church with her. Only to have the elders of the church later that day come to Danny and say, do you know what this woman does for a living? And Danny said, I do. She wondered how they do. the door of the church again. And Danny called me and said, I want to have an apologetics conference. I said, of course, that's Colorado. Do you even have a airport? He said, yeah, well, we do have the more with the plane land, but we have. I said, well, it's expensive, boss. She goes, well, I want it to be free. I will pay for it. You tell me what the cost is, I will send you a check. And I want, and it was Dr. Geisler and myself, it was a good crew. And I said, are you sure you want to do this? You sure? This is my gift to my community. No one should have to go through what I went through. Everyone should have to have questions answered. And so I flew down, I spent time with the pastors. I flew down 4 times to put this all together. They were coming on board, and then suddenly one of them decided this would be too divisive. Listen to this. So he started a fight in which they all divided. And so we had the conference, and Danny needed volunteers. As soon as she had his volunteers. Well, she had friends who were Hindus, and they did the registration. And she had friends who were Mormons, who loved Danny, and they were the ushers. And she had friends who were some other group, I forget what it was, who loved Danny, and they did something else. And so she had this whole conference that she had put together that was being served by non-believers for believers. And the non-believers not only got to hear the gospel, but the former Hindus stayed at the home of the Hindus. We just had a great time in Cortez, Colorado. Because Danny decided that reaching lost people out there was more important than playing some kind of a church seeker-sensitive game in her estimation. So Finney, Charles Finney, started in 1825, evangelism inside the church concept. Get the non-believers here. We will market the church to them. The training of the saints went out the window. In the mid-1800s, the advent of the modernism began. Atheist philosophers and Darwinian evolution and socialism were making their mark among cultural thought shapers. Judeo-Christian worldview was being challenged, but too few were up to the task of the debate. Over the next 100 years, secular humanism, progressivism, and psychology became the new religion of the masses. Humans, it was argued, are merely machines, chance accidents of time, in a meaningless accidental universe that need to be controlled by strong central government in order to ensure peace and equality of outcome through social engineering. John Dewey Decimal System, for those of you who know about that, believed that public education systems should be used to bring about social change. And in his 1934 book, A Common Faith, argued that they should use the educational system to transform society. Have they done a good job?
Yes.
They have done a remarkably good job. At that time, Christians largely left the hallowed halls of academia and started Bible colleges and seminaries. I'm not opposed to Bible colleges and seminaries, but they left a vacuum because there was nobody challenging the hostile worldview. So, who now has become the voice of culture? Media elites at that time. You get your news and worldview shaped by the media, largely. That voice permeates nearly every aspect of our lives. And in the 1980s, another shift occurred as we moved into postmodernism, where the average person believed all truth claims are equally true. Philosophers believed all truth claims are equally false. And politicians believe all truth claims are equally useful. Does that sound like something we said earlier? That's first century, isn't it? And as we moved into the third millennium, the hangover of the Judeo-Christian morality and ethos wore off, and we moved from postmodernism to transmodern society, where there is no objective truth. Truth is what you feel. You are a victim if anyone dares to question your feelings. Not only must you accept or acknowledge homosexuality, transgenderism, whatever it is that they demand, you not only must accept it, you must celebrate it with them. Or you are evil and to be treated in a hostile fashion. Alongside the media elites, we have celebrities. Bruce Jenner, Woman of the Year. Kim Kardashian is famous for what? Being famous. Bruce Springsteen breaks a contract because North Carolina violated his view of human sexuality by not allowing men to invade women's bathrooms. You can sue a Christian who says, I wish you well in your unity ceremony. I do not choose to bake your cake. Bruce Springsteen says, if you don't let men into your bathroom, I will break a contract I've already made and inconvenience everybody who's purchased tickets in that business venture because it violates my conscience. Why? Because we're in a culture that is hostile worldview to what we believe. Where else are we in culture? The problem with celebrity is true inside the church. We're having some earlier discussion how much is outside the church with celebrity pastors, authors, with whom the average Christian never comes into contact. They are airbrush personalities. You don't see them on the mornings when they get up and their hair is a mess. You don't realize they actually do have bad breath. And sometimes sweat. But you see your pastor on a regular basis. And you know that sometimes he has bad days and he gets irritable. And you know that sometimes his wife wondered, why did I marry that man? And you know that his kids can be unruly. Because you have a close personal relationship with this person who's doing this underpaid job because he cares for you and he loves the Lord. And you are comparing him to this airbrushed model. It's like comparing your mother, the mother or father of your children, with an airbrushed model in a magazine. It is not true. I'm not saying these celebrities are not solo Christians. I'm saying you don't know that. You do know your pastor and your church leaders. And so we need to see them in a different light because they are there to care for us and protect us. That is their task. They are not there to make us happy necessarily. My son, when he was young, oftentimes would think that were disagreeable to me. And sometimes he would say to me, Dad, this makes me unhappy. And I would say, son, I don't care. My task is to guard not your happiness, but your holiness. My task is to help you to be a moral, upright man of God. I don't really care how well you can play video games. Not my business. Where is culture today? Abortion is common. There are moves to not consider a newborn person a human until they are a month or 2 months old, in order to be able to let the parent decide if they want to keep them. If not, infanticide could be legally committed because they are not human until we decide they are human, up until that point they're simply property to be owned. Sex is a high priority, largely viewed as being for recreational purposes. Now that same-gender marriage is legal, the move to eliminate age of consent has renewed energy. Have any, and you can't raise your hand on this, heard of NAMBLA? North American Man Boy Law Association. They have been at trying to get the age of consent eliminated for 3 decades. They now have activists within the homosexual community who are allied with them to get this accomplished. My suggestion, 20-some years ago, we did a conference and we were asked in a panel discussion, where do we see culture 20 years from now? And Joy said, in my view, within 20 years, we will see gay marriage legalized. She was right, because that's where culture was headed. I would suggest that within 20 years, we will see pedophilia legalized if we continue on the course we are on. Because once you say there is no difference between males and females occupying bathrooms, for example, once you get to first century Rome, then anything is permissible. If all that matters is my sexual gratification, then you can't say anything I do to accomplish that is wrong, because it's a bad worldview problem. Gender is no longer based on objective anatomical reality, but on personal feelings and claims. Ergo, public bathrooms and showers should no longer be segregated. What does it feel like, I ask myself, to feel like a woman? I have no idea. I've talked to several women, you know what they tell me? They don't know either. They just know they're women, and they have the experiences of being women. And your feelings of being a woman don't give you the experiences of being a woman. Bruce Jenner in his 60s or whatever age he is, just by anatomical changes, doesn't make him a female. It doesn't do it, because there's more involved than your physical anatomy. It's interesting that we're having this conference in Palatine, Illinois this year, and about the time we were scheduling the conference and talking about having it, the Department of Education had decreed that male students should be granted access to the washrooms and shower facilities of the female students in the high school and had federal funding withheld. The school board changed their policies and took away the rights of privacy for female students. Across the nation, schools, stores, and other public places have been following suit without direct coercion from the federal government because they wanted to head it off. Like the first century, the church finds itself in a hostile culture that is trying to burn down democracy. That's where we're at. What is to be done? Realize we're not in Kansas anymore. When you evangelize, as Dr. Geisler points out, you have to do free evangelism. Why? Because culture is not Christian thinking. 25 years ago, you could hand them a tract that puts up the peace to God, and they would know what you're talking about. Now they look and they go, what God? Which God am I going to have peace with? What are you talking about? Recognize we are, as ambassadors, not in Oz anymore. We are, as the Apostle Paul points out in 1 Timothy 3:1, in the last days, we are in perilous times. And then he went on to describe the culture, and we're not going to read that now for the sake of time, but to read 1 Timothy 3. He lays out that they will be insolent, violent, haters of God, boastful, arrogant, disobedient to parents. I always love that word. Disobedient to parents. Disobedient to parents in this whole last day description. My, that doesn't describe where we're at. So what is the solution? As my pastor was sitting there watching me, waiting for the big question, because he does this every Sunday. So what? They have T-shirts now in our church that you can wear. So what? And actually, it could be used for evangelism, because people are looking there and go, so what? What's this? It's kind of fun. First, guard the flock. We're back to Acts 20:28 through 30. The pastor's primary task is to guard the flock from what? Wolves. Fierce wolves that are going to do what? Come in among you and not spread the flock. And they're supposed to guard the flock from those who would arise among yourselves, from within. That is their task. Is there anywhere in there that says the pastor's task is to do marriage counseling? Did anyone see that? I would look for that. I didn't really notice that. Did anyone see that? I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying that's not his primary task. He may do that. But you may have other couples in the church that may be more qualified to do that kind of thing. Why not have them do that? He can do it. He may be very gifted at it. But that's not his primary job. That may be his passion, but that isn't his job. How about hospital visitation? Is that his primary job? No, it is not. He might do that, and he might be very good at it. And he might be passionate about it, and as a member of the body of Christ, he should do what he really wants to do. But that isn't his primary job. We shouldn't get confused with that. There are other people who could do that as well or better, probably. And part of the reason the body of Christ doesn't function well is because it has become a participant activity, an observational activity, not a participant activity. We are members of the body of Christ, and each of us has a role to play. Secondly, defend the faith. Have a staff apologist or support with other churches a local mission to cults and other religions. The pastor and elders do not have the time to devour all the material that is available out there and all of the religious teachings that's going on. They cannot keep up with it. You need to have access to somebody who is doing that because they are passionate about it and good at it, and support them in that endeavor. Leaders disciple others. We're back to the leadership thing. 2 Timothy 2:2. The things that you have seen and heard in me, pass on to faithful men who will in turn teach others also. I was at a church some years ago. They asked me to head up discipleship, and I said, I'd like to define for me what you mean. I have always a problem with definition. I want to know what you're actually asking me, not just what you're throwing out there that you hope will pick up. And so they handed me a little blue book with 9 lessons in it. And discipling was to meet with somebody 1 hour a week for 9 weeks. Now they're discipled and they can disciple somebody else because they've done this 9-week book. I said, sorry, I can't do it. They said, why not? I said, because that's not discipleship, that's just pretend. They said, what's discipleship? Well, I said, discipleship is this. I spend time in some form or another with somebody else for a long term. Yep. I talk around and versa regularly about spiritual things, not just the Bible, but all sorts of issues come up in life, and he calls me and says, this is what's going on, how should I respond to that? What would you do? And we talk that through. Andre is discipled over a long period of time, even though I'm not seeing them face to face often. You walk with somebody a long time, you get to know when they have bad breath and they have bad days, and you love them anyway. You try to answer the hard questions or take them to somebody who can. They do what they observe you doing, they don't necessarily do what you tell them to do. If you want to know how well your disciples are doing in the Christian life, actually, if you want to know how well you're doing in the Christian life, look at how your disciples are behaving, because they're imitating you. Pray for the church and national leaders. This is a hard one for some of us, because there are some national leaders that we just don't like. Paul doesn't seem to give us the option of not praying for them, though. Do you like Bernie Sanders as a possible presidential candidate? Or Hillary Clinton as a possible presidential candidate? Or Donald Trump as a possible presidential candidate? I don't care. You need to be praying for whoever God allows to be in office. Because God often allows the kind of leader that we demand to our blessing or to our detriment. So the thing to do is to pray not only for the leader that will be, but for the influencers of that leader. Will they influence them in a righteous path or an unrighteous path? I'm not even saying should we vote for a believer or a non-believer. I'm saying we need to pray for those who will be influencing whoever the leader is. That's the task. No guaranteed outcome on a national scene, but there is a guaranteed outcome spiritually. The more you pray, the more attuned to God you become. And the more attuned to God you become, the more useful you are as He moves you into people's lives in ways that you have no idea ever have. I never planned on meeting Dan Chapman. I never expected to meet someone like Andre Traversa, who challenges me continually. sometimes he'll call me and something I thought I had a different opinion on, because he asked me the question, I hesitate to go, I'm not sure I want to answer that, God, let me think on it. Not because I don't have an opinion, but I suddenly realized that I haven't thought it through. I adopted it, but I don't know how I got to it. And I want to be honest, because Andre wants me to be honest with him. And so he keeps me accountable, even though he doesn't realize it. Pray for the church. I know he prays for me. I know other people pray for me. And the nation's leaders. That's the so what. If we're going to survive in a hostile culture, if the embassy is going to be a safe place for the ambassadors, these things must be in place. If we do not do them, the embassy is going to burn down. And there's not even an if that is only a way that will happen. Pastor James, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to call you up to pray us out of here. This is the last session. And I really feel like this is the house that God has put in place for you to guard. You have been gracious to have us here. I would like to pray this in prayer.
Just want to say thank you, Don, and all who made this possible. This was our first time. We did not know what to expect, but sometime earlier today, people from our church were asking, "Will they come back next year?" So that's our appeal. We would love to go back. We're out of time. Let me close the word of prayer. Father God, we thank you for who you are. I thank you. Sometimes, as we reflect on your word and we reflect on what is going on in our immediate culture, especially here in Palatine, where throughout all the nation, the school board here sent the mail to the locker room with the females, and sometimes we look around and say, wow, we're the only ones who are willing to stand. I thank you for this conference and what you brought people from all over. A conference in which we can look at the scriptures and say, we will stand on God's word. And sometimes, Lord, it is because of our frailty we can say, Lord, we are the only ones. And as you've done throughout history, no, there are others who have not bowed the knee. You keep a remnant. These conferences are important and they're valuable because there are still those who say, Lord, we worship you. We stand with you. So I thank you for this conference and all the wonderful topics we've heard, believers from all over share their experiences and their ministries. I pray a blessing on all of them, that they can go back to their cities, their churches, their ministries with renewed vigor, renewed purpose, as we look not to what we see, the things that are seen, for they are temporal. But we, like Abraham, we seek that city not made by hand. Time in which there will be no war. We'll wipe every tear from our eyes. We will enjoy you forever and ever. But until then, may we lean on your Spirit, guided by your word. May your saints call upon your name with courage, proclaim the gospel. That Jesus, you are Lord, and there is none other like you. And while we study and we read, you were the suffering servant. As we share in our context, we all will see you, but next time we see you, you will not be the suffering servant. You will be the conquering king. That is what we look forward for, and that is our gospel message. get right with the coming King, following